Welcome back to Attractions Insights. I'm your host, Dmitry Mikhailov, founder of Attractions Marketing Pros and America's Best Attractions Roadshow. On today's episode, we're talking with an incredible human being, a very smart entrepreneur, and my partner on a few different businesses, Angelo Peña. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dmitry. Appreciate it.
Angelo, for people who doesn't know you, share a little bit information about yourself.
Yeah, so Angelo Peña. I'm based out of Chandler, Arizona. I've been in Arizona since the mid 90s. I was born in Los Angeles, California, but I've been in Arizona for the majority of my life. Like you said, I'm an entrepreneur. I own a handful of different businesses, a lot of which I am involved in partnerships, which, we have a partnership in a couple of the ventures that we took on. And also a family man, dad of 3 girls now, and I'm just on a journey to improve myself at least 1% a day. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Angelo, and we met with you at the business conference some years ago. Can you tell me what was your thought process about going to that kind of conference and what you were looking to find there? And
Yeah, so we met I want to say it was 22. I think it was November of 22. It was the Gray Method, Abraham Gray, which is now Dealmaker Live, and they've made a whole event and big community out of it. And really back then, I just joined my very first community where I had to pay to get in, and that was Subto with Pace Morby. And through Subto, I joined the mentorship. I was involved in a couple of flips. I purchased a rental property, and I started my very first business back in 2013, but I just had an itch to continue my business journey. And I think to really achieve wealth, you have to have a combination of cash flowing businesses and real estate. And I think real estate is more of a long-term play. So I was attracted to looking into buying a cash flowing business. And when I met Abraham Gray through Subto, that guy, I don't know if he has more real estate or more cash flowing businesses, but either way, he has a combination of both. And, his story and his outlook and his presence really just kind of motivated me, inspired me to go to that conference, which he was hosting, and sharing his insight on how to buy a business, how to find one, how to structure one, how to everything as far as acquisitions and different strategies and things like that to grow and scale businesses by acquisition. So when he mentioned that he was putting on a private event in Atlanta and that this was like his second or third one, I jumped on it. And, over the last few years, I've invested a lot into personal development and different mentorships, different communities, and just different, almost access to different people. Having proximity to someone that may be a few chapters in life ahead of you, they may be ahead of you in business. I just think getting around with people that are doing better than you can really open up your eyes and can be beneficial and learn and help you to continue to grow. And one of the first things I said was, just trying to get better 1% every day. And that's really why I went to that business conference. And then I've gone to several more since then. Now I'm finding myself in the blue collar space, doing a lot of blue collar mentorships and communities and stuff like that. And I'm pretty new to the blue collar industry and construction. And I feel like having a mentor or being part of a community is a hack. It's a shortcut that can help you expedite your journey and achieve things faster. So if you're not investing in yourself and investing in personal development, investing in business or even relationships or your health even, I don't think you're really growing. So I've made it a point to just be a sponge and soak up as much information as I can from people I look up to and people that are doing things that I admire or things that I think set them apart, all in the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it's important for people to invest in themselves, because a lot of times if you really analyze or audit what we spend money on, you look at a conference and a ticket's $1,000, $2,000 or maybe more. And you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I want to spend that much. Well, if you're drinking Starbucks every day, you can start making coffee at home and save some money. Like investing into yourself is going to have a much higher ROI, return on investment, than a lot of stupid things that most people spend money on. So every year, I make it a point to try to go to a conference or go to a different event that can really help me on my journey.
How do you justify this big expense for conference? You mentioned it can be $1,500, it can be $2,500. Some mentorships there can go crazy expensive. Um, what how do you motivate yourself and say like it's worth it? This is why I'm doing this.
Yeah, I think the whole approach of joining a mentorship and putting a dollar sign behind it is really motivation, because then it's like, okay, if I'm going to spend $5,000, $10,000 on a mentorship and get in the mentorship, watch the videos, do the thing, talk to some people, but then I'm not taking action, I just spent $5,000 and it was just a waste. So I think a lot of times when we put that dollar sign behind it, it motivates you because you want to get what you paid for. You want to get your money's worth. And sometimes you need that extra kick in the butt to not put yourself in a spot where you're going to lose if you don't take action. And I feel like, in looking at the history of, what I've done since I joined Subto, and I was active in the community. I did some flips, I did some lending, and bought a property, moved on to the Dealmaker. I met you. We formed a business. We bought a escape room. I bought a roofing company, and I was just putting things into motion, taking action, because joining the mentorship or community is just one part of it, right? That's just one side of it. You took the first step, but really at the end of the day, it's all about taking action. And if you join these communities, have mentors, I mean, that's all pointless unless you're taking action. And sometimes, you're right. Some of these mentorships are expensive. It can get up there, but I look at it as a return on my investment. And historically, with what I've done after joining a mentorship, I know I'm going to get my money's worth, because I'm not just going to let that money go to waste. I'm going to take action, and I'm going to move on it. So that's my mindset behind it.
Nice. Angelo, how you were raised, I'm trying to figure out, is there a pattern for somebody becoming entrepreneur, becoming an open-minded person who is willing to learn, who is willing to invest, who is willing to make some scary steps in a new direction. So tell us a little bit more about your childhood, how you were growing up, and what shaped you as who you are today.
Yeah, that's a deep question. My parents are from Peru. They're both born and raised in Peru, and they came here as immigrants in the 80s. And, I'm first generation Peruvian American. We didn't really have a lot of money growing up. I definitely saw the work ethic in my mom, and I saw the effort that she made, and I saw her hustle. And for the longest time, I thought to myself, both my parents were loyal to their companies for such a long time as employees. I always wondered, why wouldn't they take a risk or do something a little bit more? Like, if they worked as hard for their employer as they would for themselves, like, they could be more successful. But then it's like perspective, because they did take a big risk. For them to leave their country with no family, nobody, that they didn't even know the language here. And they have a very similar story to you. I think you kind of, being an immigrant, that's a risk in itself, in moving yourself across the world and taking a shot on a new country, on a new language, on a new environment and everything. And I think that's what's kind of shaped me. I've always been a gambler, risk taker. And I just know, with my faith and just, and the way I was brought up, that I know everything's going to be fine. Money comes and goes. Experience don't last forever. And putting myself around a lot of entrepreneurs that are risk takers, I think that's what's kind of molded me lately, because I was a W-2 employee for a very long time, but I always kind of bounced back and forth. I would start the business as a side project, work a full-time job, and work on the business, outside of work hours. And then I went to full-time entrepreneurship, and then, had a big loss a few years ago and had to go back to work in a W-2 again. And then, when we met, I kind of had a few things in motion and a few other things going that it allowed me to come back to the entrepreneurial world full time, 100%. But no risk, no reward. If you don't take a risk, you're never going to get reward. And sometimes the biggest risk you have to take is on yourself, and betting on yourself, and betting that whatever you're working on, whatever project it is, whatever investment it is going to work out. Just looking at it positively, because if you think it's going to go bad, if you think it's going to go wrong, it's probably going to go bad or probably going to go wrong. So I think just starting from a place of gratitude, really, because, sometimes being a business owner, it's a roller coaster. Sometimes things are great, and then the next day, everything's, crashing down on you. But I think that's the thing about entrepreneurs, is that you have to have thick skin and have a positive outlook, positive forecasting in the future, if you will. Because if you don't, you're not going to make it. If you think you're going to fail, you're going to fail. There's no doubt about it. So give a lot of credit to my mother, especially, because she showed me what real work ethic was. But then I've had some really great mentors along the way that have taken some risks, and it's paid off for them, and that's inspired me into being a risk taker.
I remember you mentioned that you've been in the military. How this affected your mindset, what kind of experience you had, and how it shaped you as a person?
I think it was a good experience. I think it helped put a lot of discipline in me at a young age, and I learned some valuable lessons at a young age. I saw a lot more of the U.S. going into the military, because in the military it was like a melting pot. I met people from the East Coast, from the South, from the Northwest, and all over the country. And, it kind of opened up my eyes to what this country is, but it's not for everyone. And I definitely don't think it was for me long term. I did 3 years, and, I was done with my term, and I did not want to re-enlist. I have a lot of respect for our military men, but unfortunately, I feel like they are grossly underpaid for the amount of work and the risk that they put on the line regularly. It's, they're not paid enough, and I wanted a bit more out of life, and I just didn't feel like the Army could provide that to me. But I did serve my time, and I enjoyed it, made some good friends, and got to see some parts of the country that I don't think I would have seen had I not joined the Army. And it was a good experience, but it wasn't for me. I just had this entrepreneurial spirit that, I wanted to own something, create something, and be a business owner one day. And, I just didn't get that from the Army.
And from all of us, just want to say thank you for your service.
Of course. Thank you.
Yep. Now, tell me about family. How important family for somebody who is doing businesses, who is risking money on the line? How difficult it can be, and how supportive your family with your journey?
I think having a supportive spouse is the most important thing an entrepreneur can have. I mean, it's almost critical. It is critical. If you don't, it's going to really cause turmoil. It's going to add additional stress. And some people, the spouse may not understand what the entrepreneurial journey is, because doesn't stop. It's 24/7. It's always on. And some people, they're not okay with that. And I think having a spouse that's supportive and understands that and knows that you're working towards a big goal is huge and important. In my first business venture that I started, I wasn't in a serious relationship, didn't have that support. Your family will support you to a certain extent, but you can't rely on just that. A lot of times your family may try to talk you out of doing business, because they're not entrepreneurs, and they don't understand what it is, and they don't see the possibility of the reward. And sometimes they may be the most supportive, and you just got to kind of filter that noise out. But if you have a spouse that you spend time with on a daily basis, that you eat with, that you everything with, and they're not supportive, or they don't understand, or you don't communicate well with them, like, it could definitely put a strain on your home. And when your home life is affected, the business is definitely going to be affected as well. So I have a fiance that I've known for, it's going on almost 6 years. We've been dating almost 6 years. We've been engaged for a little bit over a year. And she's been the biggest, difference maker for me over the last few years. She encourages me. She believes in me. She believes in me in times where I'm defeated, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And she talks me back into it, and because it's hard sometimes. You get kicked in the balls, you get punched in the stomach, and everything happens. And if you don't have that support at home, it's just going to make things that much more difficult, more obstacles to overcome. And I feel like some of the most successful business people, even to this day, the current day, they all have that supportive spouse that understands what it takes and what it costs to be a business owner, entrepreneur.
So, Angelo, can you walk us through what businesses you had and what kind of businesses you have right now?
Yeah. The very first business I started was in 2013. I was an independent liquor distributor. I was wholesaling and importing spirits from Peru. It's called Pisco, and it's a grape brandy. It's kind of like what tequila is to Mexico. We had a family friend that was a wine producer, Pisco producer in Peru, and I decided to start importing it. But that was my very first business in 2013, and I was also importing cognac from France and tequila from Mexico as well. That was my very first business, and in 2018, I decided to shut it down. It was just a passion project / hobby that was just not profitable and a money pit. But that was my very first experience. I learned a ton. I think I spent less than what a business degree would cost, but I learned a lot more than I feel like a business degree would show you. And then I went back to working in finance and debt relief and eventually mortgages. And when we met in 2022, we formed SpinArt Phoenix that we sold earlier this year. That was a great concept and a profitable business that we had for a few years. That was a family business as well. My daughter was the general manager of it. My spouse, fiance Melissa, was also involved with managing it, and they were very sad to let that business go. They wanted to keep going, but I think we made a business decision. Then we also have a escape room, Paranoia Quest Tempe. That that was, I believe, your first business venture was escape rooms, and we were able to buy a location and bring it to Tempe, and we're going on just over a year with that location here in Tempe. Then I also have a rental business. I have rental properties and a rental car business that my fiance primarily manages, and we've downsized because at one point, we were using the app called Turo. I believe we had 23 cars at one point on there. But today we are down to 9 cars. So I've sold a lot of them and just kind of scaling back and out of that business. And then the most recent acquisition is Acclaimed Roofing. This is a roofing company that's based out of Scottsdale. It's been around for about 11 years. They had a small team in place, just doing well, just over 7 figures a year in gross revenue. And we're looking to grow and scale and eventually buy more roofing companies that we can roll up into one and make an exit in maybe 5 to 7 years from now, and rolling up a bunch of roofing companies in Arizona up into one. So yeah, quite the journey. I know it's been kind of all over the place, but I think my background has always been sales. I've always been in a sales position of some sort, and that's really what kind of, I guess, introduced me to entrepreneurship, because I think just as far as I can remember, I was selling baseball cards and pogs and things when I was younger. And then when I was at an age to start working after I got out of the military, I went right into sales and saw that you can make commission and you can make a pretty good living. And then I just, pursued my entrepreneurial journey.
With your first business, importing alcohol, you had to make a hard decision to close down the business. You lost some money with that decision. What was your thinking process? Because I know how hard it is to close the business, and especially, if you're going to lose money, a lot of people will stick to the end and pour more and more money in a business that just dying. How difficult it was to make this decision?
I think once you lose the passion and the drive for it, and it becomes more of a nuisance or more of a headache. It makes the decision easier because I was not profitable. I mean, I didn't have a profitable year, not one single year of profits. I dumped a lot of money into it. I, cashed out my 401k from my previous job that I had, got penalized. And in hindsight, it probably wasn't a smart move to do that. But, I just had this itch that I wanted to fulfill, and I wanted to venture out and at least try to make it, and at least try at having a successful business. And it was a hard pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, I just wasn't having fun anymore with that business. When I first started, I had a lot of fun, and that's what made it, it made it okay to just continue even if I wasn't making money because I was having fun. But it got to a point where the fun stopped, and it was one thing after another, and then I'm just dumping money into this thing. And I just had to make a decision. It was like I either stop the bleeding now or I bleed money out until I can. I just didn't want to risk it. I already risked too much, and I was like, okay, this is where it draws the line. Plus, like I said, I wasn't having fun, so it didn't make sense to just continue doing something you weren't enjoying. I think, if you're going to do something in business or anything, even if you're an employee, you should at least enjoy it somehow. I don't think it's a good strategy in life to work at a pointless job or endless job where you just hate yourself or hate life or hate your boss or, just hate a company or hate what you do and just stick through that like, that's not a good quality of life, regardless of how much money you make. I mean, I know people that make a lot of money that aren't happy with what they do, but they're still doing it. And I just decided I'm going to cut my losses now. I'm going to go back into sales. I'll recoup whatever I lost in a year or two, and it'll be fine. It was. I worried about it. I lost a lot of sleep, and I was up late nights thinking about it. But at the end of the day, everything worked out fine. It's part of my journey, part of my story, and I learned a ton in the process.
You mentioned that you had a lot of cars at some point, but now you downshifted.
Yeah, so the thing with Turo is it was a great stepping stone for me. It helped transition out of W-2 life into entrepreneurial life, and it helped pay the bills. When you really break down how much you make per hour, per car, I want to think bigger. I want to go after something bigger. There is money to be made on Turo. Don't get me wrong. You can make money, but I'm looking for something with a bigger return, and I have bigger goals and aspirations. That's why I'm looking elsewhere. And over the last couple of years, because I've been on there for almost 5 years now. They've made a lot of changes, and I feel like a lot of these companies, when they're in startup, it's always the best time to, if you're an early adopter, if you're on a platform early, everything's in your favor. They really take care of their host to begin with. But now everything's in the favor of the guests. There's situations where people damage the car, and because of their policies and the way the business model is with Turo, there's been damages that I've had to absorb. I'd had to eat the cost on it. It doesn't happen all the time. There's some good people out there that will, if they mess up your car, if they crash it or damage it, they'll pay, but not everybody's like that. And I haven't agreed with some of the changes that Turo has made over the last couple of years. And I feel like they're very favorable to the guest instead of the host. And the host is what matters, because if there's no host, if there's no cars, then they have no platform. So I feel like they got it backwards. And so I don't agree with that. But like I said, I'm focusing on bigger things. That's really what motivated me into pivoting out of it. And I see that opportunity in the roofing business. I see that opportunity in construction, in the blue collar space. And that's why I'd say majority of my attention and focus and energy right now is into Acclaim Roofing.
Your situation with Turo reminds me Airbnb right now, because I'm in a lot of Airbnb groups, and a lot of people talking about that it shifted so much in favor of clients who is visit that there is a lot of damage happens, or a lot of abuse happens where people trying to check in early, check out late, and there's a lot of different stories where they say the same thing, like in the past it wasn't that hard, and these days it's like hard, and people thinking potentially to leave. The problem is there is not many options where they can live. A lot of people feel like they are hostages in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even with Turo, there's less platforms in Turo, or in the cars than there's in homes, because Airbnb has VRBO and you could even do private stuff, but Turo's kind of has a monopoly on the auto industry. Turo has zero competition. The competition is like National Car Rental, Hertz Car, all the big car rental companies. But there's no other platform. And yeah, I have an Airbnb as well. I know exactly what you mean. They are shifting towards the guests, and it's not the best business practice. So I'm gonna scale back on that and look elsewhere.
How do you feel that Elon Musk and his autonomous driving, I think it's getting closer and closer to be rolled out in multiple cities. Do you think it's going to affect also tour fleet owners a lot?
I think it'll have some effect, but I don't think it'll be a major one, because I still think people want to be in control. They want to be in control of when they can pick up and go and leave in the car, that you aren't going to get that with autonomous drivers and stuff like that, or maybe you will if they rent cars, but I don't think it'll affect that. I think it will affect more like the people that drive Uber, the people that drive Uber Eats, even Amazon drivers, and some of those jobs that could be automated. But I don't think it'll make a huge dent on the Turo market, because I still think people will want to be in control of when they get up and go versus get in on the app, wait for the car to get here. Sometimes people are in a rush, they run behind, meetings go over. I don't think it'll affect it that much, but I do think it'll affect other businesses like Uber, because if there's automated cars, why do you need a driver?
Right.
But in Turo, you
Makes
are the
sense.
driver, so.
That makes sense. Now, let's shift to entertainment. How did you come up with the decision to partner up and open a SpinArt studio? This is question number one. And question number two, was it your first partnership with somebody?
Yes, what interested me the most in SpinArt was a proven concept. You had a few locations already. The other thing is there was nothing like this in Phoenix, and now there's a few copycats. So, I saw an opportunity there. And to answer your second question, this was the first partnership that I had. I think that had a big influence on it. And I think, the proximity that we have, the relationship that we both have with Abraham Gray kind of made that a little easier, because he said good things about you, and I'm sure he said good things about me, and we'd already done business together. So I think that kind of helped. But, going into something SpinArt, like that was something I couldn't have created or come up with on myself. I'm not that artistic or even care to be. So when you presented that, and then I thought about, there's nothing like this in Phoenix, and Phoenix is, obviously a pretty big market. I just saw an opportunity, and I was looking to invest into something, and that just kind of checked. I went into that Abraham Gray event that weekend with the idea of buying a cash flowing business, and then meeting you and getting to know, about your businesses and you being in the entertainment. It made it a little easier to make that decision, just because, you had a proven track record, you had Abraham Gray vouching for you. And, I just saw the opportunity that there's really nothing like that in Phoenix.
With the partnership, tell me, what did you learn, or what kind of advice can you give to somebody who've never done a partnership with a different person? How different it is from just owning it on your own?
I think with every partnership, you should have a equal amount of what everyone contributes, right? You have to collaborate. If it's too one-sided, if I'm doing 90% of the work and 90% of everything that it takes to run a successful business, and you're doing 10%, it's going to end bad. I think you have to have a balanced partnership. And the other thing is, before you jump into a partnership, it's good to get to know them, do your due diligence, do some homework on the person, try to understand them, because at the end of the day, you think about a business partnership, there's no end date to a business partnership. When you start an LLC, you don't put an end date on it. So that could be your business partner for the next 1 year, 2, 3, 10, 15. You really don't know. And if you're going to be in business with someone like that for a while, you better do your due diligence on them and make sure they're a good person and they can deliver on what they promise, and make sure it's even, right? You don't want to feel like you're doing too much. It needs to be even across the board. Right.
Let's talk about our example, how our partnership worked, what you were responsible for, what I was responsible for, and how did it work?
Yeah, so you had the proven concept, you had the blueprint, the design aspect, providing the infrastructure, providing the marketing. Yeah, I mean, it's providing all the HR stuff and everything on the back end, all the administrative stuff, and basically the infrastructure of the business. And me, as being local here to Phoenix, was the local operator that was up to me to hire a team, fire the team, secure the location, do all the ownership stuff that you have to do, all the legalities, the services, and setting everything up and making sure everything's running smoothly. And that was the roles that we had. So it's just extremely important to do your due diligence. Think about the future. Is this a short-term commitment or a long-term commitment? Can you see yourself being a partner with this person for a long period of time, and just making sure that the responsibilities and the roles are evenly split, so there's no hard feelings or anything like that down the road. So I think that's important things to look at and consider when thinking about a partnership.
And on my end, I want to add to everyone who is listening that when you're looking for a partner, especially if it's somewhere away, right? Because I live in Atlanta, Georgia, Angelo lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were opening this location in Phoenix. It's very important for your operator to have some skin in the game. So Angelo didn't mention on this particular project, we went 50-50. And I usually make sure that on a project like this, where I have operating partner, they invest money along with all the expertise they're going to bring to the table. And if they're going to run like day-to-day operations, money is important. At the beginning, a lot of people are going to be fired up, and they're going to have a lot of interest. But then as time progresses, they might have different interests. Life can change. There might be some life events happening. And if there is no skin in the game, it's very easy for them to walk away. And you're going to have a problem on your hands, because now you need to replace them with somebody who want to be running the business. Pay attention to this. And if you're planning to partner up with somebody, it's always good for your partners to have skin in the game as far as money. Another important thing is take it slowly and get to know each other and see what's your priorities, where you want to be in a year, in 2 years, 5 years. Because if your goals doesn't align, then it might be difficult in the future. And the last thing that I want to mention, it's very important to have a good operating agreement in place. No matter who you're dealing with, if it's your best friend, especially if it's your family members, you need to make sure that you have a operating agreement that describes everything, who is going to be responsible for what, and what's going to happen if somebody going to stop doing what they're responsible for, or you need to maybe add additional funds if business is not doing as good as you planned originally. All of it needs to be described in your operating agreement. Now, Angelo, how is it possible that you've been operating partner, but in the meantime, you had some other businesses you were working on? Explain to us the logistics of it.
It's difficult. I won't say it's easy by any means, but I think you have to prioritize things in life and really audit what you actually spend your time on a regular basis, because there's 24 hours a day minus whatever you sleep, 6 to 8 hours a day. That's plenty of time to do work on things. I think it's just a matter of prioritizing things. In all of these businesses, with the exception of my very first one, where in the very first business I was wearing all the hats. I was wearing sales guy, bookkeeper, accountant, producer, content creator, like marketing, everything. I was doing everything. In this time around, I've always had a general manager that oversees the day-to-day operations, so I can work on the business and not work in it. Because if I was working at SpinArt and doing all the SpinArt instructor tasks, there's no way I'd be able to do all this other stuff. But if we have the right people in the right seat that are handling all the day-to-day, then that gives me time and freedom and flexibility to work on other projects and just make sure that everybody's sticking to the game plan. And I definitely could work on SOPs, standard operating procedures and systems, but I feel like we've had enough systems in our businesses to make things run smoothly, where the general manager has a good grasp on the day-to-day stuff and would only take a certain emergency or certain special things that require an owner attention. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was just making sure I have the right GM in place to execute the day-to-day so I can oversee it and work on whatever project I need to be working on.
And Angelo, let's shift our attention for a little bit to the marketing, because you've been essential part of our marketing efforts for this business. So can you share with us what channels of marketing do you think was very important and is important in an attractions business? Because I'm sure for your roofing business, it's a little bit different approach. But let's talk about attractions. Let's talk about entertainment, and specifically this SpinArt paint studio.
With attraction entertainment businesses, you want to have multiple channels of marketing, right? You don't want to just stick to one. But I think in this case, the most important one that I identified before we even opened our doors was social media, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and working with influencers. I think the influencers were a very big part to our success. First of all, you have to be in tune with what's going on in your market. Like if you don't know who the good influencers are, who's hot, who's sharing the cool things, then that's where you have to start, right? Identifying the right influencers that fit your audience, that fit the demographic that you're looking for, and then just reaching out to them. I had a very, very scripted message that I had sent out to a ton of influencers. A lot responded, some didn't. A lot were free, some we paid for. But doing my own outreach to influencers to get them in, to get them to showcase and highlight the business, especially a SpinArt business, because it was very visually appealing. So they really liked the color and the lights and everything, the artistic side of it, creating something and highlighting that. And every influencer has a different style, a different eye, a different, kind of their own unique vision and style that they put on their content. So
yes,
having different influencers gave a bunch of different point of views, different perspectives that we didn't get from just one or two influencers. We used a lot of influencers, and I think it's very important. It almost falls in line, kind of similar to the restaurant industry, if you will, and just showcasing the food and the dining and the ambiance and all that stuff. So it was get influencers to come in, because we had something very unique. Like I said, we had an opportunity in Phoenix, or nobody else had something like this. So we're the first ones there. Of course, everybody wants to share it. Nobody's ever heard of SpinArt. Nobody's ever seen a SpinArt. So I think it was easy to have some of these influencers do reels and collaborations and work with us to help drive the business and drive sales.
And Angel, tell us what kind of different influencers were invited and how you were determining who is going to be paid influencer, who is going to be free influencer visiting, and what's the different result the free ones provided versus somebody paid.
Absolutely. I targeted a lot of pages that did food reviews, things to do in Arizona, activities, the family mom influencer showcasing things to do with your kids. And then from there, I kind of broke it down into audience, depending on their audience size, would determine if we would pay them or not. If it was an up-and-comer, newer influencer that didn't have a whole lot of an audience, we would collaborate with them for free. We wouldn't pay them, but they could come in and experience and bring, 5-6 friends and experience it and be the first ones to cover it. And it worked. And then there was months where we spent several $1,000s on influencers. A lot I feel like we got a return on, but one specifically I remember there was a page that had close to 1 million followers, and it was like $7,000 I think we spent that month. But on the flip side, that ended up being our biggest month that we had since we opened. So I think if you do your homework and research with intention, you find the right influencer and you find someone that you can work with that has the same audience that you're looking for, it's absolutely worth it. Obviously, we kind of spaced it out and had a budget on a monthly basis that we would allocate to it. So we kind of had to save up to put that larger budget into play. But I think it absolutely makes sense for an entertainment business to spend money on collaborations. Like how else are people going to know that you're there, that you exist, or that it's cool unless, someone that they already follow shares something of yours.
And how much approximately you were paying for, let's say, if they have so many followers, we would pay that much. And what was the highest you paid for the influencer?
Yeah, there was a handful of influencers that we paid a few $100s to. A lot of influencers that we paid nothing to. Especially at first, we didn't have a huge budget to do it, and people wanted to cover it because it was new and it was hot, and it was a new attraction in town. But there was a few times where we spent $2,000-$3,000 on them, and a couple of times where we didn't really get a big return on our investment. But the largest budget that we had was with that bigger page that was close to 1 million followers. They're over 1 million followers now, but at that time they were at like 700,000. But it was Welcome to Arizona, and I think we spent $6,000 on the production and $2,000 on the ad spend to boost the post to get more eyes and more views on it. So keep in mind, not only do you have to put a budget aside for the collaboration, the production, but you also have to put a budget aside for the ad spend. If you want to boost it and get more eyes and views on it, you're going to have to spend some money on ad spends.
And now explain to the audience who is not familiar with the concept how it works.
So the only way you can boost the post is if you post it. So when we worked with these influencers, since they created the reel and they posted it, we would have to send a budget to them. The budget would be allocated to them so they can boost it from their end. And basically boosting it just lets you create a special targeted list. Our list was like people that are in the age of 16 to 40 something that are at least 30 miles of the Phoenix area, that had artistic interests, creative interests, different type of cohorts that you can target specifically, and that would get more views on those reels and those posts that they would make.
Now, how do you track the conversions? Because one of the biggest problems people see with influencers and similar marketing, it's hard to track. So how you normally track, and how do you see that it brings you results?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to track because there really isn't a way, unless the influencer is sending you screenshots of, click links and stuff like that. There's really no way to track it unless you make the post yourself and you boost it from your end. So it was hard to track, and you also want to be careful when providing ad spend to an influencer, because not all influencers are very honest. Some can take advantage of you, so you have to be careful. You have to make sure you're vetting the influencer if you want to do it that way, or just have them create the video for you. Let them post it from their page. You get a copy of that video, and then you post it from your page, and then you boost it on your page, and then you're in control. You can track it that way. But, we learned that very early on is, having them boost it, you have to trust in them and hope they share the data with you, because if not, there's really no way to track it. Unless things have changed. I don't think it's been a while since I boosted one, but I don't think that's changed, and you just kind of have to have trust and verify.
Yeah. And so influencers is very important. What other marketing channels worked really well?
You definitely have to have a presence on Google. The reviews are very, very important. I feel like that's almost the newest version of SEO, if you will, because that's one of the first things people go and look at when they Google you is reviews. Obviously, we did a lot of SEO. We did a lot of email marketing. We did a lot of text campaigns as well. That's why I said earlier, it's good to have multiple marketing channels. You can't just stick to one. You have to diversify, but you also have to test things, and whatever is winning, whatever gets you the most results, like that's where you need to put your money at. Like that's where you want to double down and and create that ROI.
I really like the things that you've done with collaborating with the local other businesses. Influencers aside, this is a little bit different strategy. Tell us more about how you've done that.
Yeah, so I was thinking SpinArt and even in the escape room, what's a good way to give value to our followers, and collaborating with another restaurant, making a date night out or a group night out or dinner and SpinArt, or barbecue and an escape room. Some type of combination of that worked great for us because, one, it doesn't cost us anything other than the giveaway that we're giving, right? If it's admission for two, our cost is pretty minimal. The restaurants would love to do that because they're getting exposure from your audience. They're gaining traction, they're getting views, they're getting followers as well. And it's really good to collaborate in that sense because you're leveraging each other's audience. Some restaurants that we worked with have a way bigger audience than we did, but then there's also some smaller restaurants that didn't have the audience that we have. So it was leveraging each other's audience, minimal expense on it, minimal investment, because it's an investment, because it's just the admission that you have to give up. And then I would take it upon myself to go to the restaurant and gather some content, some footage, and then put something together in a reel, put it on there, post it, and then collaborate with them. And then, like I said, their audience is viewing it, our audience is viewing them, and people are excited. Like people want to win free stuff, especially this day and age. So it's like everybody's entering to win, and you get a lot of traction and momentum when you do these giveaways. So it's a strategy that anybody can put into play. You just got to reach out to another restaurant or similar business that is willing to collaborate, willing to give away admission or dinner or whatever. And then you just put something together in form of content that looks appealing, showing both businesses, and you make sure you have a good caption that explains the rules, and you'll get a lot. We got a ton of followers, a ton of likes and reposting and all this stuff from a lot of these giveaways, and it was a very minimal investment. So it's a good strategy to take.
With this strategy on marketing, how do you implement your marketing strategy with your roofing business? Because it's a different industry at all. Tell us, what were you able to copy and use, or what other strategies you came up with? Just curious.
It's a lot different, especially in roofing. Like, roofing is probably the most boring thing you are going to spend money on in your house. Like, nobody cares to spend money on their roof. It's like out of sight, out of mind. People don't get excited about a roof. So it's a lot different. It's a lot different. And I think the social media aspect to roofing isn't going to make someone buy, right? So if someone looks at an escape room or SpinArt, they're like, oh yeah, I want to go there. I want to do that. But people aren't going to buy roofs because they saw me on a roof or us doing work like that. That's not how people buy, especially with a high ticket item like that. So really our strategy with Meta and social media is more or less brand awareness, just having a presence there, showing that we are doing work, but we're not like necessarily trying to sell people on Instagram or Facebook. What we are investing a lot into is local service ads on Google. Even PPC is not worth it in Phoenix. There's a lot of big competitors. They have very big budgets. It makes PPC very expensive and not worth it. But local service ads do work. We do a lot of SEO, a lot of organic stuff, so we can, rank higher on the Google searches and stuff like that. Because people go to Google when they want to do something with their home. If they're the first thing they're going to look at is Google Maps, and then they're going to go straight to your reviews. So in this aspect, pay a lot of attention to our reviews, and we put a lot of weight on that because that makes a big difference on the construction side and home improvement side of things, where it's a little bit different in the entertainment side. So it's totally different, and I'm still learning. And I haven't been able to figure out a good giveaway or someone to collaborate with, because I can't give away a roof. A roof's like $10,000-$15,000. Although we kind of have this idea for something like that in a charity aspect, but I don't think we're there yet. And it's like, who can I collaborate with? I've even reached out using the influencers that I know from SpinArt and Paranoia Quest, and reached out to them about doing something with their roof, like me doing free roof maintenance for them, and they're not interested. It's like they don't care too much about their roof until their roof is leaking and they have water inside their home when it's too late at that point.
Interesting. So you're saying that SEO is very important for a roofing business as a part of the marketing strategy. Do you think is the SEO important for attractions, so for escape rooms, for again paint studios, or any other attraction?
Yeah, absolutely, 1,000%. I mean, I feel like personally, I think you're probably want to spend more of your budget on influencers and social media on the entertainment side of things, and probably a little bit less on the Google side of things. That's my personal opinion, but I still think you need both, and I still think you'll find customers on both. But I think your bigger return on investment is on social media because that's where people look on Instagram and Facebook to like, what am I going to do this weekend? What are we doing with the kids this weekend? What are we going to do for spring break or things to do? People will kind of gravitate towards that on social media.
But why do you think that SEO, organic searches and traffic to your website, why do you think it's important?
It's important because you have to have a digital presence. Google's the biggest search engine on the planet until ChatGPT takes over, but then that'll be AI marketing, AI SEO at one point. I feel like I think that's not too far ahead, but right now Google is the biggest search engine. So if you don't have good SEO, if you don't have organic, then you're missing out. If someone was to Google search your business name and they have to scroll down to find your business, that's not good. If someone searches your business name, you need to be the first thing that pops up. And if you don't have SEO, if you don't have organic, that's not going to happen.
Right. And also a lot of people start asking us, and we see this question pop up more and more. How do you actually pop up on a chat GPT or Gemini results? And not a lot of people realize that the main way how you can get on these results is actually having excellent SEO, having excellent optimization of your website, and having the right articles and having the right blogs. So, ChatGPT and other AI models can actually pick it up and show it as a result.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that myself when I use ChatGPT. It uses references from Google. So yeah, I mean, that's super important.
Angelo, thank you so much for your time. It was great conversation. Thank you guys for listening to us. As always, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.